Alright, I'm going to finish off where I left for reading Spinoza. On page 80 is where I left off, I believe. I guess this will just have to work. Bear with me. Alright. I left off at number 2, but I'm going to go ahead and read number 1 at the top of page 80. This doctrine is good. 1. Inasmuch as it teaches us to act solely according to the decree of God, and to be partakers in the divine nature, and so much the more as we perform more perfect actions and more understand God. Such a doctrine not only completely tranquilizes our spirit, but also shows us where our highest happiness and blessedness is, namely solely in the knowledge of God, whereby we are led to act only as love and piety shall bid us. We may thus clearly understand how far astray from true estimate of virtue are those who expect to be decorated by God with high rewards for their virtue and their best actions, as for having endured the direst slavery, as if virtue and the service of God were not in itself happiness and perfect freedom. 2. Inasmuch as it teaches us how we ought to conduct ourselves with respect to the gifts of fortune, or matters which are not in our own power, and do not follow from our nature, for it shows us that we should await and endure fortune's smiles or frowns with an equal mind, seeing that all things follow from the eternal decree of God by the same necessity, as it follows from the essence of the triangle, that the 3 angles are equal to the 2 right angles. 3. This doctrine raises social life, inasmuch as it teaches us to hate no man, neither to despise, to deride, or to envy, or to be angry with any. Further, as it tells us that each should be content with his own, and helpful to his neighbor, not from any womanish pity, favor, or superstition, but solely by the guidance of reason, according as the time and occasion demand. 4. Lastly, this doctrine confers no small advantage on the commonwealth, for it teaches how citizens should be governed and led, not so as to become slaves, but so that they may freely do whatsoever things are best. The top of page 81, the instinct of spiritual preservation. Everything, in so far as it is in itself, endeavors to persist in its own being. The endeavor wherewith everything endeavors to persist in its own being is nothing else but the actual essence of the thing in question. The mind, both in so far as it has clear and distinct ideas, and also in so far as it has confused ideas, endeavors to present in its being for an indefinite period, and of this endeavor it is conscious. This endeavor is called appetite. It is in fact nothing else but man's essence, from the nature of which necessarily follows all those results which tend to its preservation, and which man has thus been determined to perform. Further, between appetite and desire there is no difference, except that the term desire is generally applied to men, in so far as they are conscious of their appetite, and may accordingly be thus defined. Desire is appetite with consciousness thereof. It is thus plain from what has been said, that in no case do we strive for, wish for, long for, or desire anything because we deem it to be good, but on the other hand, we deem a thing to be good because we strive for it, wish for it, long for it, or desire it. Bottom of page 81, the 3 basic emotions. Pleasure is the transition of a man from a less to a greater perfection. Pain is the transition of a man from a greater to a lesser perfection. What I mean by desire I have explained above. Beyond these 3, I recognize no other primary emotion. All other emotions arise from these 3. Active and passive emotions. I say that we act when anything takes place, either within us or externally to us, whereof we are the adequate cause. That is when, through our nature, something takes place within us or externally to us, which can through our nature alone be clearly and distinctly understood. On the other hand, I say that we are passive as regards something when that something takes place within us or follows from our nature externally, we being only the partial cause. On passive emotions. Love is nothing else but pleasure accompanied by the idea of an external cause. Hate is nothing else but pain accompanied by the idea of an external cause. The mind has once been affected by two emotions at the same time. It will, whenever it is afterward affected by one of the two, be also affected by the other. Anything can accidentally be a cause of pleasure, pain, or desire, simply from the fact that we conceive that a given object has some point of resemblance with another object, which is wont to affect the mind pleasurably or painfully. Although the point of resemblance be not the efficient cause of the said emotions, we shall still regard the first named object with love or hate. We endeavor to affirm concerning ourselves and concerning what we love, everything that we conceive to affect pleasurably ourselves or the loved object. Contrariwise, we endeavor to negative everything which we conceive to affect painfully ourselves or the loved object. Thus we see that it may readily happen that a man may easily think too highly of himself or a loved object, and contrariwise, too meanly of a hated object. This feeling is called pride, in reference to the man who thinks too highly of himself, and is a species of madness, wherein a man dreams with his eyes open, thinking that he can accomplish all things that fall within the scope of his conception, and thereupon accounting them real and exulting in them. So long as he is unable to conceive anything which excludes their existence and determines his own power of action, pride therefore is pleasure springing from a man thinking too highly of himself. Again, the pleasure which arises from a man thinking too highly of another is called over-esteem, whereas the pleasure which arises from thinking too little of a man is called disdain. We endeavor to bring about whatsoever we concede to conduce to pleasure, but we endeavor to remove or destroy whatsoever we conceive to be truly repugnant, therefore, or to conduce to pain. Thereto, or to conduce pain. By the very fact that we conceive a thing which is like ourselves, and which we have not regarded with any emotion to be affected with any emotion, we are ourselves affected with a like emotion. Affect us. If we conceive that anyone loves, desires, or hates anything which we ourselves love, desire, or hate, we shall thereupon regard the thing in question with more steadfast love, etc. On the contrary, if we think that anyone shrinks from something that we love, we shall undergo vacillation of the soul. From the foregoing it follows that everyone endeavors as far as possible to cause others to love what he himself loves and to hate what he himself hates. Wherefore we see that everyone by nature desires epiter, that the rest of mankind should live according to his own individual disposition. When such a desire is equally present in all, everyone stands in everyone else's way, and in wishing to be loved or praised by all become mutually hateful. If we conceive that anyone takes delight in something which only one person can possess, we shall endeavor to bring it about that the man shall not gain possession thereof. We thus see that man's nature is generally so constituted that he takes pity on those who fare ill, and envies those who fare well, with an amount of hatred proportioned to his own love for the goods in their possession. Further, we see that from the same property of human nature, hence it follows that men are merciful. It follows also that they are envious and ambitious. Lastly, if we make appeal to experience, we shall find that she entirely confirms what we have said, more especially if we turn our attention to the first years of our life. We find that children whose body is continually, as it were, in equilibrium, laugh or cry simply because they see others laughing or crying. Moreover, they desire forthwith to imitate whatever they see others doing, and to possess themselves whatever they conceive as delighting others, inasmuch as the images of things are, as we have said, modifications of the human body, or modes wherein the human body is affected and disposed by external causes to act in this or that manner. If a man has begun to hate an object of his love, so that love is thoroughly destroyed, he will regard it with more hatred than if he had never loved it, and his hatred will be in proportion to the strength of his former love. He who conceives himself to be hated by another, and believes that he has given him no cause for hatred, will hate that other in return. If anyone conceives that he is loved by another, and believes that he has given no cause for such love, he will love that other in return. If a man has been affected pleasurably or painfully by anyone, of a class or nation different from his own, the man will feel love or hatred, not only to the individual stranger, but also to the whole class or nation thereto he belongs. Hatred is increased by being reciprocated, and can, on the other hand, be destroyed by love. Hatred, which is completely vanquished by love, passes into love, and love is thereupon greater than if hatred had not preceded it. There are as many kinds of pleasure, of pain, of desire, and of every emotion compounded of these, such as vacillations of spirit, or derived from these, such as love, hatred, hope, fear, etc., as there are kinds of objects whereby we are affected. Any emotion of a given individual differs from the emotion of another individual, only in so far as the essence of the one individual differs from the essence of the other. Middle of page 86, on active emotions. Besides pleasure and desire, which are passivities or passions, there are other emotions derived from pleasure and desire, which are attributable to us in so far as we are active. Among all the emotions attributable to the mind as active, there are none which cannot be referred to pleasure or pain. For all emotions can be referred to desire, pleasure, or pain. Now, by pain we mean that the mind's power of thinking is diminished or checked, therefore, in so far as the mind feels pain, its power of understanding, that is, of activity, is diminished or checked. Therefore, no painful emotions can be attributed to the mind in virtue of its being active, but only emotions of pleasure and desire, which are attributable to the mind in that condition. All actions following from emotion which are attributable to the mind in virtue of its understanding, I set down to strength and of character, fortitudo, which I divide into courage, animositas, and high-mindedness, generositias. By courage I mean the desire whereby every man strives to preserve his own being in accordance solely with the dictates of reason. By high-mindedness I mean the desire whereby every man endeavors solely under the dictates of reason to aid other men and to unite them to himself in friendship. Those actions, therefore, which have regard solely to the good of the agent, I set down to courage. Those which aim at the good of others, I set down to high-mindedness. Thus, temperance, sobriety, and presence of mind in danger, etc., are varieties of courage. Courtesy, mercy, etc., are varieties of high-mindedness. Thank you. That was the end of page 87.